Welcome back to the Espresso Outlet YouTube channel. We have the DF83V. We've done a couple videos on this and I've had so many people say I want to see the DLC Brew burrs. So I got them in. The other day when I did a video, I didn't have them quite yet. I had the SSPMP, but today we are going to put in these Brew burrs. They're just a really nice looking burr. It's not like an identical copy to like a Ditting by any means, but it reminds me of more of a Ditting style burr that's extremely popular, that has these just enormous finishing teeth. So this is going to be brew only burrs. I have tried these in the past for espresso. You're going to get more of like the turbo shot out of it more than you're going to get espresso that you are able to easily dial in. So just know if you're getting these are pretty much dedicated for brew, but they do a fantastic job at the brew. So just know what you're getting with those. If you went with like the SSP multi-purpose, you can do espresso and brew. They're just quite a bit different burr and quite a bit more expensive. So we're going to take a look at installing some burrs in the DF83V today. Really all that you need is a screwdriver, and if for whatever reason we need to shim it, maybe just a couple pieces of aluminum foil and a dry erase marker is really my preferred method of checking zero. So let's get started. I'm going to start by setting these burrs off to the side. Make sure that your grinder is unplugged. I did before I started the video, but it's always a good idea. You don't want to run into an issue. And I'm probably going to remove like the bellow and put all this stuff to the side because it seems like whenever I don't, it wants to fall off as I'm installing burrs. So I think the best way of doing this is to lay out like a microfiber cloth and to place the grinder on its back. So it's kind of like a normal DF83. You're just putting it on its side. You're going to be able to put your burrs in the top much easier. So to begin with, we're just going to remove this upper burr carrier. Really simple to do. I mentioned in my previous video, this adjustment dial has grease in it, and so does the burr carrier. So you may pull this out and think it's one piece. Be careful, because you're going to pull this and it's going to fall on the ground and you might damage something. So just know that they kind of want to stick together at first, but there's the first piece of the adjustment dial, and then here is the burr carrier itself. So we've been using it with these DLC coated espresso burrs. Been really enjoying these. They've just done a fantastic job for me. But we are going to swap over to these brew only burrs. Give the brew only a try. So I'm going to get the camera set so that you can see a little bit better, and we're just going to install these. Okay, so to start things off, you really just need a screwdriver, a good Phillips head screwdriver. You may need some sort of a smaller screwdriver or like an X-Acto knife to pick some of those grounds out of the burr carrier. We'll see if we can get it out without it. This grease that they use, it will stain your countertop potentially. I put it down on a paper towel. It'll just make cleanup a lot easier. So it's just as simple as removing the 3 screws. Takes kind of a downward force into those grounds to get a good grip, unless you're picking them out. I'll probably pick them out on the rotating carrier because it's going to be a lot more difficult to get that out. And we'll set these 3 screws off to the side. So here is our burr. And it'll clean up really easy. Let me grab a brush. And I recommend storing these in some bubble wrap or the original packaging. So really easy to take the burr out. There is a silicone ring, just to know that that is in there. A lot of people, they end up losing it because they don't realize it's in there. And it's just to prevent grounds from getting caught in the middle there. I just like to run it through my fingers real quick, get any residual grounds off, and put it aside. And then we're going to put, let's see, use our brush, and we're going to clean this surface. Very important to have the surface nice and clean before we lay our new burr down. So, nice and clean. Let's grab one of our brew burrs. Now, unlike SSP has a top and a bottom. These are identical, so it doesn't matter which one you put on first. Take one of your silicone gaskets, put it on the bottom. And then align the holes in the burr carrier with the burr. So if you need to clean your screws, like I did, toothpick, little jeweler's screwdriver, X-Acto knife, something like that is not going to hurt the screws at all. And just pick any of those grounds out before putting your screws back in, because we want to get a good tight grip without slipping on our new burrs. And I like to just get it barely tight. So as soon as it just barely grabs, and then I back it off a little bit. Same on all three. We'll tighten down little by little, one at a time, until it is nice and snug. Now for the final tightening, I like to just snug them up. Let's put this off to the side in a safe location so that we can work on the rotating burr. Okay, so we have our rotating burr over here. I do recommend, I didn't show this earlier, just take a small screwdriver, or probably ideally a toothpick or something, to dig out these screw pockets. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult to get out, but it's still not going to be that bad. If you have like an air compressor, that's also a good method, but I still recommend kind of picking at it first, because it's going to give you a better result. Then simply unscrew the 3 screws. So with the 3 screws loosened, carefully pull them out. You may have to turn your grinder upside down to get them out. Just be very careful not to drop the burr or lose the screws. Now this burr can be a bit more challenging to get out. You may end up having to turn your grinder over. If you kind of give it like a twist, it usually should free up some of the buildup between the wiper and the burr. I usually like to, on the inside only, take some needle nose pliers and see if I can kind of get a grip on it. You don't want to do it from the outside to damage your burrs. So very important is the prep again. We have another one of the silicone rings. I like to pull it off and put it to the side. Wipe it between my fingers just to get all the grounds off. If you have an air compressor, that's probably the best way of cleaning this out. But I also do caution, when you use an air compressor, it has very high pressure and you can bend or break your declumper, as well as just lose small parts like the springs. So I kind of don't recommend it unless you're just very cautious with it. You can use a brush and a small bulb as well. I would probably rotate it back and have it all come out the front, but you can break up with like a small bulb. So let me rotate this and we will do that. Okay, we kind of have it on its front now. You can take a brush and brush that burr carrier and make sure that it's just very nice and clean. I'd recommend tilting it slightly forward and using some sort of a bulb or compressed air just to get it good and clean, to get all the small pieces out. Because if you try to tighten that down, you're going to be tightening some of the small particles behind the burr potentially. So it looks pretty clean on the inside. I think we're ready to install the bottom burr. Okay, so don't forget that we have our silicone O-ring that we need to place down first. And make sure that it's nice and centered on that bottom burr carrier. Next, we're going to pretty much align the holes in the burr carrier with the holes in the burr and drop the burr into place. Pretty much best we can straight down. So if you didn't clean your screws before, make sure to clean out your screws before doing the same process that we did with the stationary burr, but for the rotary burr, I like to just get them just barely in there, and then we start tightening each one at a time. Okay, so we have our rotating burr in place. Now let's put together the grinder, but before we do that, I'm going to do a quick, simple alignment check, just using a dry erase marker. Now on these black DLC, it can be really difficult to see the mark. I do recommend getting more of like a red, potentially a green color, but all I have today is black. So it's gonna be pretty difficult to see. So people do worry about non-toxic markers and such. These dry erase, they're non-toxic, and I just run a little bit of coffee through them. That seems to get it all off afterwards. It's difficult to see. I can see it better in person than you can probably see it in the camera, but I have coated it with black on the top and the bottom. And then we're going to reassemble this. Now there is a key in the bottom and a notch in the bottom of the grinder. So when you reassemble this, it's important to align that keyway with that slot, and it'll just fall into place easily. Next, we're going to want to put our adjustment mechanism back on. Be careful not to cross thread. We're going to want to completely tighten this. Now you may need to back off your adjustment setting because it may end up stopping right here, and that's because a lot of times the SSP burrs are a little bit thicker. These DLC really shouldn't be, but our 0 point is probably going to be just a hair different. So there it stopped. So I backed off the setting and it allowed me to go back to that 0 point. Now what we want to do is we want to get it near 0, back it off a little bit. Then I'm going to plug the grinder in. We have it on probably about setting 15. Let's set it on 300 RPMs. We're just going to go. So that's the 0 point. Let's turn it off and unplug the grinder. And then remove this adjustment mechanism again. And we'll do an inspection of how closely aligned they are. So we're aligned from pretty much here all the way to here. It probably could use a shim up there. It's a little bit difficult to see. Let's look at the bottom. The bottom, we're really only looking at those outer teeth because that's the only part that makes contact and touches each other. So even though you still see black, these are wedges, and it's those two surfaces don't touch each other. So looks pretty good. This one looks pretty good. I am going to just throw a shim under this one real quick. So you will need to take this off. I do recommend knowing the orientation of your burr because if you rotate it, I mean, it's really going to defeat the entire purpose of the alignment. Probably about one piece of foil is all I'd really need. So I'm gonna go do that real quick. Okay, so it turns into a bit of a boring video, pulling burrs out, putting them back in. If you're really worried about just hyper aligning them, I would say that the original alignment is perfectly acceptable and probably much better than what most grinders come out of the factory, even other various brands. So, that being said, let's zero our grinder. We're going to plug it back in and turn it on. We have it running at a really low speed. So previously it was right there. Now it's on about setting 2. So you need to grab a Allen key. It's usually one of your smaller ones. It does not come with the grinder, I don't believe. But there is a small set screw. You loosen that set screw and then just set that dial point on 0. So now our 0 has been reset. And we'll probably be running it fairly coarse for our brew settings. So that's really all it takes to swap the brew or over to brew burrs. Put your bellow back on, put your dosing cup back under, and we are ready to go. So that's all that we're gonna do today. All I wanted to show you was the brew burrs. I know we've got a lot of questions about it. I've done a couple write-ups in the past, but we didn't really get them until recently in stock. So these are going to be an option with the DF83V. You can get it for the other DF83 as well. We'll have them sold separately. But really the stock burrs are going to be these DLC coated espresso burrs. And these are somewhat of a multi-purpose burr. You can use them for like Chemex, V60, all your pour over methods. I really find that they do fantastic for espresso, and that's really the profile or the cut profile that they're designed to do is espresso. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video, the burrs that we just put in today, they're really only going to be for brew methods. So if you're doing this as a dedicated brew grinder, these are gonna be just really phenomenal burrs just for brew only methods. So maybe you have like this DF64 Gen 2 that you've dedicated for espresso, and then you want that dedicated brew grinder. This would be just an amazing combo. Let's pan over a little bit. So you could run both of these just in tandem and get probably the best of both worlds, really high clarity drip, as well as some fantastic espresso. So thank you for watching. We'll be doing more. Now I have some other burrs that I've set off to the side. I showed them the other day. They're the SSP multi-purpose burr, and they can do a little bit of both. They can do espresso, but they can also do just high clarity pour over methods as well. Now there are some trade-offs between the brew only burrs and those, but the upside to maybe the SSP is you are able to do both espresso and pour over methods a little bit easier. Now, a lot of people, they think that that's maybe the best for them, but a lot of the people that really gravitate towards that, it's the beans that they use are probably not going to be the best method for those burrs. If you like the really high acidity, fruity coffee, those multi-purpose are really fantastic. But that's it for today. Please hit subscribe, and we're just going to do more and more with this. We've had just an overwhelming number of comments below, lots of great ideas, and we just want to get as much content out there as we can just to answer your questions. So definitely, if you have any questions, shoot them out below, or you can find our email on the Espresso Outlet website and ask us some questions about this grinder or any of the grinders that we sell. So for now, appreciate you guys watching.